The North American Olive Oil Association recently released one of the most reassuring reports in years. Almost every major brand on American shelves passed purity tests with flying colors. No adulteration, no hidden blends. For an industry once marred by doubt, that's worth genuine praise. But progress doesn't mean forgetting. Not long ago, olive oil was one of the most compromised products in the grocery aisle, scarred by mislabeling, dilution, and the fading promise of extra virgin honesty. So tonight we'll go back into the past and reveal 5 brands that lost their way and 2 that continue to press truth into every drop. This isn't about fear or outrage. It's a reminder that even a trusted industry can be wounded, and that trust once cracked takes years to rebuild. Because that golden can or dark glass bottle in your pantry may be perfectly fine today, but it still carries the weight of what happened years ago. Number 1. Berolli. In 2018, Berolli's parent company, Deoleo, quietly agreed to pay $7 million to settle a class action lawsuit in the United States. The case alleged that bottles labeled imported from Italy misled buyers since many were filled with oils pressed in Spain, Greece, or North Africa. Regulators called it an issue of language. Consumers called it a breach of belief. For generations, the green and gold label had stood as shorthand for Italian authenticity. Then a few pages of court filings revealed a different geography of truth, one where marketing traveled faster than origin. According to the settlement documents, Deoleo denied any wrongdoing but promised to change its labeling and improve traceability. On paper, that closed the case. However, beyond the paperwork lay something harder to repair: the slow erosion of instinctive trust. Millions of families still reached for the same familiar bottle, unaware that its extra virgin pledge had once been tested under legal light. Habits endure longer than headlines. The brand survived, but something in the taste changed. Maybe the oil, maybe the feeling. Inside the supply chain, nothing looked criminal. Blending Spanish or Greek oil with Italian stock is not forbidden. It is standard industrial practice. But the phrase "imported from Italy" turned a logistical detail into an emotional illusion. When the company updated the wording to "bottled in Italy," the letters changed quietly, yet the meaning shifted completely. The geography of trust had been rewritten by a single preposition, and the correction felt like a whisper. Meanwhile, laboratory testing across the olive oil world grew more exact. Chromatography replaced old tasting panels. Chemical profiles could trace an oil's ancestry down to the grove. Science advanced, but memory lingers. Even today, some longtime buyers swear the flavor is milder, the bite less peppery. Whether that is oxidation, formulation, or nostalgia hardly matters. Perception has already rendered its verdict, and perception is what rides home in the shopping bag. Berolli's story shows how transparency must reach deeper than compliance. It is not enough to meet a standard. One must live by it bottle by bottle and season by season. Purity is measured not only by chemistry but by the willingness to disclose. If the label carries a harvest date, a bottling window, and a clear accounting of origin, confidence has room to breathe. If not, doubt creeps back in through the cap and settles where flavor used to live. For shoppers, the takeaway is modest but durable. Read what is written, notice what is missing, and remember that a century-old name can still forget its roots when speed and scale take the wheel. Because once the promise of purity becomes only a slogan, the trust that built it begins to fade, drop by drop, shelf by shelf, meal by meal. None of this erases recent gains in industry testing or the work of many producers. It simply explains why dark glass cool storage and shorter supply chains matter when you want flavor, antioxidants, and truth. In the fine print of trust, reputation ages faster than oil. Number 2. Carapelli. There was a time when the name Carapelli smelled of Tuscany itself. You could almost hear the echo of stone wheels grinding against each other, the soft hum of copper presses dripping gold into earthen jars. In the late 19th century, the family's mill in Florence was more than a business, it was a ritual. Each harvest olives were pressed within hours, their grassy perfume drifting through narrow streets lined with cypress and sun-warmed brick. It was loud, imperfect, alive, a kind of music that turned labor into pride. But nostalgia can mislead. Those same sounds have vanished beneath the polished rhythm of stainless steel. Inside the new factories, the hum is constant, measured, obedient. Efficiency has replaced patience. Filtration replaced cloudiness. The warm scent of grass gave way to the sterile chill of temperature control. To be fair, the science is impressive. Modern extraction keeps acidity low and yields high. Yet somewhere between art and output, something essential went quiet. Carapelli remains one of Italy's most recognizable olive oil brands, now owned by Deoleo, the same conglomerate behind Berolli. The bottles still wear the elegant script and embossed glass invoking old-world refinement. But behind the label lies a network of industrial blending, where olives from Spain or Tunisia might join those from Puglia or Crete before finding their way into Florence. It is a global system, not a local secret. On the shelf, the aroma of home meets the logic of scale. In 2015, Italian prosecutors investigated several brands, including Carapelli for oils, that failed to meet extra virgin standards in official taste panels. The company denied wrongdoing, and years later, the case dissolved quietly. Yet the story lingered longer than the verdict. Even if chemistry cleared, the brand perception did not. Customers began to wonder if Tuscan flavor was still Tuscan, or simply a memory bottled for export. Meanwhile, marketing grew more sophisticated. Carapelli introduced the Fior Fiore and Il Nobile lines, each promising artistry through design and glasswork. The bottles became sculptural, almost architectural tall shoulders, black caps textured embossing meant to suggest heritage. But design, like perfume, can only imitate the real thing. What used to be a craft now looks like its photograph. The label whispers of art, the product hums of management. Still, the transformation isn't evil, just inevitable. The modern olive oil market demands consistency and volume, and Carapelli delivers both. Yet the question isn't whether the oil is safe or even pure. It's whether the romance survives the refinery. When a legacy brand grows too quiet, something human is lost, the noise of pressing, the chaos of harvest, the song of risk. That silence, once comforting, now feels hollow. For the older generation, opening a bottle of Carapelli can feel like visiting an old friend who speaks with a new accent, recognizable but restrained. The flavor is mild, balanced, engineered for neutrality. It offends no one, excites no one, and lingers only a moment before fading. Perhaps that's the price of perfection. Perhaps that's the sound of progress. Because even as the brand polishes its image, the echo of the old mill still hums in the background, a reminder that purity once had a sound, and that silence isn't always peace. A legacy preserved in name, not in taste. Number 3. Pietro Coricelli. They keep saying extra virgin, but nobody remembers what that means anymore. The inspector muttered his nose, hovering over a tasting glass stamped Pietro Coricelli. He'd graded oils for decades, long enough to watch that familiar green and gold label drift from pride to puzzle. Once Coricelli stood for the quiet certainty of Umbria, hand-picked olives, early presses, and families who treated oil like language, precise, sacred, alive. Now the words remained, but the meaning wavered, stretched thin across borders and markets that no longer spoke the same dialect. In 2015, Italian authorities tested several major brands, including Coricelli, after sensory panels questioned whether their samples met the extra virgin profile. The results were ambiguous, chemically sound, yet organoleptically imperfect. Coricelli protested, arguing that temperature shifts and human subjectivity distort judgment. A year later, the case faded, but headlines outlived the nuance. For many shoppers, once a name enters an investigation, it never fully leaves it. On paper, the definitions are clear. Extra virgin must be cold extracted, mechanically pressed, low in acidity, untouched by heat or chemicals. In practice, clarity dissolves into interpretation. Some countries test by chemistry, others by taste. Two labs can rate the same oil differently, and that gray zone between formula and feeling is where trust begins to leak. For companies like Coricelli, the ambiguity became both armor and burden, enough flexibility to pass, enough confusion to persist. Inside its sleek facilities and Spoleto production hums with precision. Stainless tanks line the floor, sensors monitor temperature, computer systems record every batch. Nothing illegal, nothing careless. But compliance isn't conviction. The oil meets the standard, yet the language around it has aged. Words like cold-pressed or first-press, now printed more for comfort than clarity. Marketing calls it heritage. Linguists might call it drift. Moreover, the label itself tells a different story, the soft gold font. The cursive nostalgia, the word classic, underlined like a promise. It feels trustworthy because it looks familiar. That's the trick, familiarity replacing faith. When every bottle declares extra virgin, the phrase loses gravity. It becomes rhythm, not guarantee. And shoppers, overwhelmed by sameness, stop listening. For the average consumer, the confusion feels invisible but exhausting. You reach for what your eyes remember, not what the fine print defines. The aisle hums with repetition, pure light, extra classic. Each word chasing credibility until none has any left. That quiet fatigue, not scandal, not deceit, is what erodes connection between product and promise. Coricelli's story in the end isn't about dishonesty. It's about language wearing out under the weight of its own success. A brand can remain reputable, even honorable, yet still lose the poetry that once gave its oil a soul. Because words like flavor demand freshness. When they go stale, even truth tastes muted. When words lose their meaning, honesty becomes flavorless. Number 4. Sasso. To the eye, Sasso looks pure. That golden glow behind glass, that sunlight shimmer through the label, it's the kind of brightness that sells trust. On the shelf, it stands out like jewelry among groceries. You can see the oil, and that transparency feels honest. But that's the quiet trick. What looks like purity is often the very thing that steals it away. Light doesn't care about marketing. Under fluorescent aisles and kitchen windows, it moves through clear glass and starts a slow chemical unraveling. Olive oil is alive with fragile compounds, the polyphenols and antioxidants that make it taste sharp and grassy, the same ones that protect your heart and blood vessels. When too much light hits them, they begin to fade just like color from an old photograph. The bottle still shines, but the oil inside begins to age before you ever open it. Sasso became famous in Italy for that glow. For decades, its clear bottle was a badge of pride, proof that the company had nothing to hide. The brand leaned on visibility as virtue. See, our oil is golden, clean, beautiful. And for generations of shoppers, that sight meant quality. It wasn't deceit, it was culture. In the Italian mind, oil should look like sunlight, not hide in the dark. But as science caught up, that pride turned ironic. In 2015, when Italian investigators examined several household oils, Sasso among them, the results reflected more than mislabeling. They revealed a structural misunderstanding. The oils weren't always bad. Many simply weren't as fresh or potent as claimed. The culprit wasn't conspiracy, it was exposure. Clear glass bottles sitting under heat and store lights had quietly undone what the Groves had built. Yet the packaging never changed. On supermarket shelves today, Sasso's transparency still gleams like a promise. But open a freshly bought bottle and the aroma can feel weary, less green, less bright, more muted. You can almost sense the distance between what's shown and what's left. Under that honesty of glass, the oil has been slowly losing its edge. And while the harm isn't dramatic, it is quiet and real. The protective nutrients fade, and the taste that once danced becomes flat. That's the strange beauty of the Sasso story. It shows how even good intentions can turn against themselves. The company wanted to be open to display its quality. Instead, the display became its weakness. The oil that once symbolized Italian clarity now reminds us that seeing isn't always knowing. For the body, the difference is simple but human. When the oil's antioxidants are gone, you lose the reason you chose olive oil in the first place. The heart-healthy compounds vanish long before the best-by date, leaving only calories and color. What shines on the shelf no longer shines inside you, and yet most buyers never notice. The label still reads pure, the color still glows, and the habit feels safe. But habits can dull judgment. We've learned to equate light with truth when in fact light is what breaks it. Sasso's bottle will always look beautiful, that's the tragedy. Transparency sells faster than patience, and brilliance when left under the wrong light becomes self-destructive. The brand still holds a place in Italian kitchens, still carries nostalgia for a simpler time. But for those who look closer, the brightness tells a quieter story of a company caught between heritage and optics. Because in the end, the clearest bottles often hide the most invisible losses. The color draws you in, the glow reassures you. But under every beam of light, something living inside begins to fade. Turns out the clearer the bottle, the murkier the truth. Number 5. Primadonna. For many families, the story starts with a price tag, not a grove. A bottle of Primadonna olive oil on a discount shelf costs less than a coffee at the corner cafe. It's neat, affordable, and for shoppers who just want to cook dinner, that's enough. You grab it, feel clever for saving money, and move on. But what looks like a simple win at the register is part of a quiet trade-off that stretches far beyond the store. Primadonna is Lidl's private label olive oil, a product of the supermarket economy. It isn't born from one hillside or one harvest, but from a spreadsheet of contracts, bulk shipments from Spain, Greece, or North Africa, blended and filtered until every bottle tastes the same. That uniformity is the point of flavor that pleases everyone and offends no one. But sameness has a cost. The more you blend, the less alive the oil becomes. The bright pepper note that signals antioxidants filtered out. The slight cloudiness that means freshness removed for appearance. The result is a pale, polite oil that cooks fine but says nothing. At that price point, freshness becomes a luxury. To meet a shelf target of 2 or even 3 years, producers over-filter and under-declare. Each round of processing gives the oil a longer life and a shorter soul. The liquid you buy today may have been pressed long before last summer. And while it still meets the chemical standards for extra virgin, it no longer carries the vitality that made olive oil special in the first place. Primadonna was among the brands examined during Italy's 2015-16 investigations into mislabeling. The reports didn't accuse it of fraud. They simply showed how industrial systems stretch the definition of virgin until it fits the volume demanded. It's not crime, it's arithmetic. To sell oil that cheap, someone somewhere gives something up. Sometimes it's the farmer who accepts a lower rate. Sometimes it's the blend that loses its edge. Sometimes it's the consumer who never realizes the difference. Behind the margin lies a simple truth: discount chains run on predictability. They need every product to behave the same way, taste, color, stability, month after month. That means stripping away variation, and variation is where character lives. What's left is efficient, tidy, and hollow. The oil still shimmers under the light, but the story behind it has been pressed out. And yet you can't fault the shopper. In times of tight budgets, a $5 saving matters. The problem isn't the choice. It's the illusion that cheap can be the same as fair. The system depends on that illusion, on trust, that the label means quality, that extra virgin always equals health. But real olive oil doesn't fit into that math. It spoils, it changes, it resists standardization. Its honesty is inconvenient. Still, every discount has its debt. The price looks merciful today, but it collects interest in the long run, in lost nutrients and weaker flavor, in the quiet fading of standards we no longer see. So next time you lift that bargain bottle, remember, value isn't just what you save, it's what survives. A bargain that costs your trust is no bargain at all. The truth is, not every bottle hides a story of compromise. Among the noise of marketing and the shadows of old mistakes, some brands have quietly chosen a harder path, one that favors transparency over volume and freshness over profit. They protect the harvest, honor the grove, and let nature set the pace instead of spreadsheets. These oils aren't just commodities. They're conversations between farmer and field, between soil and season. And after years of confusion, it's comforting to know that a few still pour honesty, golden, fragrant, and alive into every drop. Number 6. Cobra Estate. While others chase the image of purity, Cobra Estate measures it. In an industry that still leans on marketing poetry, this California-based producer has built its reputation on something rarer: proof. Certified by the California Olive Oil Council and repeatedly honored at the New York International Olive Oil Competition, Cobra has turned transparency into both policy and pride. No mystery origins, no cloudy labeling, no borrowed prestige from Europe. Just local groves, rapid pressing, and hard data. Every drop begins in the fields of Northern California, where olives are crushed within hours of harvest, not days. The company's own mills sit beside the groves, so fruit never travels far enough to lose its freshness. That distance, or rather the lack of it, is everything. Because when oxygen, light, and heat are kept out of the process, polyphenols stay in the very compounds that give olive oil its peppery bite and its heart-protective edge. Under California law, producers who use the extra virgin label must meet measurable standards for acidity and purity. Cobra goes further, testing every batch for freshness, flavor balance, and phenolic strength. Those results aren't hidden in marketing language, they're published, traceable, and verified. That kind of confidence doesn't need gold trim or Italian script. The numbers tell the story. Inside the mill, the process looks less like tradition and more like precision agriculture. Stainless steel crushers hum under LED lights, digital sensors log temperature, and sample jars move from press to lab in minutes. Technicians measure oxygen exposure and moisture content with the same care a winemaker gives to terroir. For them, science isn't a replacement for nature. It's a form of respect. By measuring the smallest details, they protect the oldest truth that real olive oil spoils and only care can delay that clock. Taste confirms what the data predicts. Fresh Cobra oil hits the tongue with a clean bitterness, then warms into a green peppery finish. You can feel the vitality that the dark glass protects, crisp, alive, slightly grassy. It's not the kind of oil that hides in the background. It insists on being noticed. Drizzle it over tomatoes, and you understand immediately that freshness isn't a flavor. It's a feeling. Perhaps that's why Cobra earned loyalty not through nostalgia, but through consistency. In a world of imported illusions, they've made in California mean something again. Their bottles aren't cheap, but they are fair, every cent visible in the labor it took to protect the integrity inside. Where others dilute, they distill. Where others decorate, they document. And that balance of rigor and warmth, science and soul, might be the future of honest food. It reminds us that purity doesn't have to hide behind heritage. It can live in the open, defended by data and sunlight. Because when science serves flavor instead of profit, technology becomes an act of care. At the end of the day, what Cobra Estate offers isn't perfection, it's proof. And proof in a market crowded with promises is its own kind of poetry. Proof that transparency can taste this good. Number 7. Kirkland Tuscano PG. You don't expect greatness to come from a warehouse aisle, but sometimes it does. Kirkland Signature Toscano PGI. Costco's own brand olive oil is one of those quiet surprises that change the way you look at the label. In a store built on bulk and bargains, this bottle tells a different story, one of regional disciplined small growers and serious Italian oversight. The PGI on the label stands for Protected Geographical Indication, a European certification that requires every olive to be grown pressed and bottled within Tuscany itself, under the eye of a consortium that checks every stage. That means no mixing with cheaper imports, no refilling from tankers halfway across the world. What goes into the bottle has a birth certificate. And for an American warehouse brand to carry that seal, it's a statement not of luxury, but of respect. Under the Toscano rules, olives must be harvested at precise ripeness and pressed within 24 hours. The oil must be cold extracted, meet strict acidity levels, and pass a professional taste test. Costco didn't just buy the name, they bought into the system. Each bottle lists a lot number that traces back to specific Tuscan mills. It's the same process used for fine wines, quietly applied to something you pour over salad. More importantly, the price never betrays the integrity. It's affordable, consistent, and fresh, proving that honesty doesn't need to cost a fortune. The oil itself tastes vibrant green apple at first, a flash of almond, then that peppery finish that tells you it's real. Pour it into a pan and it smells alive, grassy, warm, sharp in all the right ways. And perhaps the best part, it reaches people who would never spend $30 on a boutique bottle. It brings the idea of traceability, of knowing your oil's birthplace, into ordinary kitchens. That's democratization in its purest form. Not lowering standards to reach more people, but raising access so more people can taste standards. In a world that keeps teaching us to expect less, Kirkland Tuscano teaches the opposite. It reminds shoppers that even a global retailer can honor local soil and that accountability can exist at scale. It's not perfect, but it's transparent. You can see its origin, verify its certification, and trust that what's inside matches what's promised. So for once, the reward isn't for those who seek the rare, but for those who simply shop wisely. The truth isn't hiding in boutique stores or behind handcrafted fonts. It's sitting in a row of sturdy bottles under bright warehouse lights. And if you listen closely, that sound you hear at checkout isn't just a barcode beep. It's the sound of integrity, scanned, sealed, and ready to take home. Sometimes honesty hides in plain sight, right there on aisle 12. At the end of the day, olive oil isn't just a pantry item, it's a small reflection of how we choose to live. Every drop tells a story about care, patience, and honesty. And though the aisles may be filled with shining bottles and easy promises, the truth still belongs to those who look closer. Don't let packaging or price decide for you. Let information, freshness, and integrity lead instead. Choose oils that name their harvest, protect their light, and respect the land they come from. Read labels slowly. Ask where it's made, how it's stored, and who stands behind it. Because when you buy with attention, you don't just feed yourself better, you help keep an honest craft alive. One good bottle won't change the world, but millions of thoughtful choices might. So the next time you reach for that familiar shape on the shelf, pause for a heartbeat. Choose the oil that still remembers the grove.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.